Hello. How are ya? Got my pillow back here. I hope you don't mind. I have this pillow back here a lot, but I'll take it off right now. I hope you're doing good. Well, it's fall is coming. Fall is coming. I've seen actually pictures of the first um, yellow aspens, turning of the aspens in the mountains. So, yeah, usually Labor Day is when the first aspens are changing colors, and that's for me is when fall is coming, which I like. I love fall. I think fall is the season I like the most. Right now it's still getting hot during the day, but oh my goodness, at night it gets nice and cool, and I really, really like that. Today I want to talk again about first fruit. I really think that is very important when we talk about the rapture, when we talk about the Feast of Trumpets coming up here soon. We still have 1 month this year. But we have to understand that because, again, in my German video, my last video, somebody wanted me to watch a video, and again somebody was of course denying the rapture, and they were using 2 Thessalonians 2 and ignored of course 1 Thessalonians 4 and 5, which I have discussed. But yeah, that's people denying the rapture. Why? And I think one of the things in my last video talked about the wedding, and that the rapture is part of the wedding, the Hebrew wedding, right? Well, today I'm going to talk about first fruit. This first fruit harvest is something new or something different for our Western civilization. We don't do that. Now, the Hebrews used to do it. Are they still doing it? I don't know. But we know during the spring, the first feast that we are celebrating is called, the big feast is Passover, and connected to Passover is the barley harvest. And connected to the barley harvest is first fruit. Jesus is being the first fruit. And Jesus is the first fruit in terms of resurrection. He's the first one resurrecting, and then we also become first fruit, part of that first fruit. And we are called first fruit in many, many places. And one of these places that we're called first fruit is 1 James 18. And here it says, let's see, of his own will he brought us forth by the word of truth, that we might be a kind of first fruits of his creation. We are first fruit, not a kind of, but we are first fruit. First fruit has always to do, of course, with harvest. And so many people come out and say, well, harvest is this and this and this, when the angels, gather together the good fruit and divide from the bad fruit, and actually the wheat and the wheat will be, split, and the bad stuff will be thrown into the fire, and the good stuff will be harvested. And so many people mention, oh, the harvest is there and there and there. But they forget very easily that when it comes to God, and of course Hebrew tradition, we have this thing called first fruit. Now, first fruit is where the master himself, the owner himself, will pick the best fruit, or let's say first, like the best of the lambs, okay? The best of any of the animals, and they will offer it. It will take it to the temple as a offering to the temple. That's what first fruit is, and people don't understand it. They don't know that there's a first fruit harvest. Nobody talks about it. I've never heard about it in any of the churches that I went to. But people, this is what we are. We are first fruit. And first fruit means that the master himself will pick up that first fruit. We are offered to God as holy things. We see that also if you go to Revelation 14. And I don't remember exactly where. I'm going to check it out. So it's in Revelation 14, and it has to do with the 144,000 that are gathered on Mount Olive. What is Mount Olive? Okay, this is not the literal Mount Olive. Oh no, not Mount Olive, Mount Zion. This is the Lamb standing on Mount Zion, and I talked about that. These people are not literally standing on the real Mount Zion, but not Mount Zion is symbolic for the mountain of the Lord or the New Jerusalem. So they're standing in the New Jerusalem. They're gathered by the Lamb in New Jerusalem. Okay, 144,000 is not the seal group in Revelation 7. Okay, it's not the seal. This is not the seal. This is a different group. There are also 144,000 because 144,000 is a symbolic number. It's a complete number. So here they are. They're standing in Mount Zion. I keep saying Mount Olive. Mount Zion. And these are, if you read the description, are first fruits. These, and it's in verse 4, second part, these were redeemed from among men, being first fruits to God and the Lamb. Okay? So these are first fruits, people. I have talked about that in my videos not too long ago, but I want to make this video very clear because that is important. The harvest of the first fruit. Okay, the first fruit harvest. And the first fruit harvest comes before the regular harvest. Again, the master goes through, picks the best fruit. Then he sends out his angels or his laborers, his servants, to do the regular harvest. And we are not in the regular harvest. The regular harvest will happen during the wrath of God. So therefore we know that we are being picked before the wrath of God. Okay, so it's an indication. But you have to understand this idea about first fruit or the first fruit harvest. So when the bridegroom comes, that's what the first thing will happen during the day of the Lord. That is exactly on the Feast of Trumpets. Okay? Feast of Trumpets. Because that is when the wrath of God also starts. Someday. It's 1 year. I don't know if it's this year. It could be this year. Could be this year. We're close. How do I know we're close to the wrath of God? Well, because we see the catastrophic events starting to happen. Now, again, I watch this Suspicious Observer a lot. or sometimes. And he says, oh, it will take another 10 to 20 years before the poles shift. Well, people, I would not trust that. We see the signs right now. There's also another one that talks about that. Is called the Oppenheimer Ranch Project. I think it's called Oppenheimer Ranch Project. He also talks about it. So we know that there's several people, several scientists that research it, this 6,000-year cycle, catastrophic cycle, and that we are approaching the end of this 6,000 years right now. And we're seeing it because everybody knows there's something wrong with the weather. Yeah, and they blame it on global warming because they don't want to tell you what's really coming. The governments don't want to tell you what's really coming. They're keeping you blind until the last minute. But this is what's going to happen. So therefore, we see that the wrath of God is approaching. We cannot deny it. Well, you can if you want to. Doesn't help you one bit, does it? We see it approaching if we open our eyes. We see the weather is going bad. We see there's something wrong with the sun. Every year we're having hotter and hotter summers. Or better, extreme temperatures. Maybe that's the right word. The sun is extremely potent. In other words, it's has a lot of strength. It destroys a lot of things like plastics. Leave it out there for a while and things deteriorate very easily because of, I don't know, what is it? UV light, whatever, I don't know, in the sun that destroys things. And of course it destroys your skin as well if you're staying out too long. But people, we know the wrath of God is coming, and before the wrath, we have the first fruit harvest. The wrath is really the harvest. It's part of the harvest. God is destroying the ungodly. He's throwing them in the fire in a sense, because that's what happens when these catastrophic events are happening. He's going to destroy Babylon the Great. We can see that in Revelation 18. How he destroys Babylon the Great in some, with fire. It will burn. What's happening lately, have I actually said that already? That in Italy, just recently heard somebody talk about Italy and the activities, the volcanic activities they're having there in the region, specifically in the region of Naples. And they should be really evacuating the people. Have you seen Naples before? It's a pretty big city. It's very hard to evacuate people. But anyways, so they know something is coming. I mean, with all the volcanic activities all over the world, we know something is coming. They know it. And that is the wrath of God. That is God destroying the world. At the end, people, all cities will be destroyed. All of them. That means there's going to be such bad volcanic activity that all cities will be destroyed. That's how bad it's going to be. Well, of course, if you destroy the cities, people in it will be destroyed as well. It'll die. So we see that the wrath of God is coming. And so we have to understand that that is the regular harvest that is again done by the angels. And then at the end, there's going to be Judgment Day. And who is sitting on the thrones? It is Jesus and his bride. Why is the bride up there? How did it get up there? Because they were picked up during the rapture. And I'm going to use the word rapture. Don't be afraid, people, to use the word rapture. Okay? Even dispensationalism is not defining rapture wrong. Okay? Rapture is always, you go to 1 Thessalonians 4 and 5 and 1 Corinthians 15, and you can't go wrong. That's what rapture is. That's what the definition is. When Jesus comes and snatches out his bride, his first fruit, just like we see here in Revelation 14. He snatches out his bride. He takes her up on Mount Zion to the New Jerusalem. And there he says, hide yourself a little while. Where is that? That's in Isaiah. What is it? Isaiah 16, 19 through 21. Or is it? Yeah, I think. No. Isaiah 26. Isaiah 26, 26, 19 through 21. Look that up. That's where he tells, that's where the resurrection happens. And he tells his people that are being resurrected to hide in the room that he has prepared. Read that. That's when he says, go hide yourself for a little while until the wrath has passed. And this is what he is expecting people, his bride, to do. He is not going to leave his bride behind. What bridegroom would do that, people? So the enemy locked the bride up in prison or in a room or wherever, captured the bride. She is captured by the enemy. And so then Jesus bombs the camp of the enemy with the bride in it. Wouldn't you think he will send a spy in first, or himself? I would think the bridegroom will do it himself. He will sneak in at night. Isn't that what I have been talking about now for the past, I don't know how long? He's sneaking in at night like a thief in the night. He will steal his bride. He will rescue his bride, take her out, and then he's going to bomb the blank out of the enemy. That's exactly what will happen with the first fruit. He will take her out first before he destroys the enemy. Does that make sense? You really think he's going to destroy the bride with the enemy? It doesn't make sense. We are waiting here with the enemy, right? We're almost like we're captured by the enemy. We're almost in prison. Well, we are in prison, aren't we? With the enemy. And you think he's going to bomb the blank out of the bride as well? I don't think so. That's why we have this symbolism, or that's why the Hebrews always had to do the first fruit harvest. You think God just told them, oh, do a first fruit and take it to me? No, God knew exactly what he was doing when he told them, when he instructed them to do the first fruit, to bring the first fruit into the temple. He did that on purpose, just like the appointed days, people. Everything in the Old Testament that he instructed as symbolism for the New Testament. The same with the wedding. It's symbolism. Same with the wedding. So people, we need to understand these things. Now, these things are not being taught in our regular churches, right? Oh no, we don't know that. So that's why then our timeline is up. Of course, we also just allow false teachers into our churches, right? And just mess the truth up. So yeah, then we're gonna go wrong too. But the most important thing, people, is that we understand these Hebrew traditions, not the traditions that the Jews have today. Okay? They're messed up. They're very messed up. But we have to go further back to a time before it got messed up. The Hebrew traditions started to get messed up during the Babylonian captivity. That was 500 years before Jesus' time. Okay, 500 years before Jesus came. They were in Babylonian captivity. That's when they started with this oral tradition. Okay, or what they call today, they call it Talmud. They wrote it down in the Talmud. This is when they started going wrong. They created their own religion, their own traditions, and they got away from the ways of the Lord. They didn't remember anymore. Did they know it before that these things are symbolic for the Messiah and what Messiah is going to do? I don't know. I don't know. See, right now, they're only empty traditions. They don't mean anything, really. There's no meaning behind it. But when we go back and realize, wait a minute, first fruit has a purpose. First fruit is symbolic for the bride. When we go to 1 Corinthians 15 and we read about the resurrection and rapture, there we also hear about the first fruit. That we are first fruit, just like Jesus is first fruit. And that we have, up here it says that we have the name of the Father written on our forehead. That's not a seal. It's not the seal of the sealed. So many people confuse that with Revelation 7 and the sealed. No, just because it's the same number doesn't mean it's the same thing. So yeah, they confuse that, but we better don't confuse it, because we have here the name of God on our forehead, or the name of the Father. Okay? And they're redeemed from among men, being first fruits to God and to the Lamb. And in their mouth is found no deceit, for they are without fault before the throne of God. Actually, they're not only before the throne, but then first they are before the throne, but then they're sitting on the thrones in Revelation 20. First they come before the throne, and then Jesus says, here are your thrones, sit on it. And when we are coming back, we're going to sit on our thrones, and we will judge with Jesus, because we will rule with him and we will judge with him. And who are we judging? We're judging the 144,000 sealed that had to go through the wrath of God. They're the foolish virgins that did not make it into the rooms that Jesus prepared. They will have to go through the regular harvest because they didn't make it. So, people, we need to understand that. And today I just wanted to make a short video about it. I know I have talked about it so many times, but I want to specifically address it today, because I believe it is, not I believe, it is part of the first, it's part of the harvest, but it's called the first fruit harvest. That's what I call it. That's what I call it. The first fruit harvest. Of course, here, what is it called? First fruits. They're called being first fruits to God in the Lamb. So they are first fruits. And that's why I call it the first fruit harvest. And it's not something that I made up. It's actually a Hebrew tradition. It's just the way it was supposed to be done. Now again, our Western world, we don't do it that way. Why not? Well, because we don't think that we have to bring first fruit, of course, into the temple. And temple isn't here, right? So that's why. But then we miss a lot of the, what do you call it? The traditions or the meaning of end times. That's what it is. And when we miss the meaning, then we get confused about the timeline, the end times timeline. Then we totally jump over the first fruit harvest and go directly to the main harvest. I mean, people, I don't mind. You want to go to you want to be into the in the regular harvest? Go ahead. So, but we need to understand that there is a regular harvest and there is a first fruit harvest. And yes, sometimes God talks about, or Jesus talked about, the regular harvest, and not specifically about the first fruit harvest. I think the first fruit harvest, just like everything with the bride, was kind of a mystery. I think especially still during Jesus's time. I don't think Jesus talked about a rapture or that event when the bridegroom, well, he talked about Matthew 25 when the bridegroom returns. He didn't give it a name. He just said the bridegroom will come and pick up his bride, and the other foolish virgins will stand in front of the door and cry. And Jesus is saying to them, I don't know you. So I talked about that as well. But we need to know about these things. I'm coming to an end, people, because we're coming so close to the Feast of Trumpets. And I believe this is some year, I don't know if it's this year, next year, or when it is, that event will happen. Jesus will come and pick up his first fruit. He will pick the first fruit up himself. And then they will stand on Mount Zion with him in the New Jerusalem. And during that time when they're up there, the wrath of God will happen. Again, Isaiah 26:19 through 21 shows you clearly what happens when the resurrection happens. And where are the people going when the resurrection happens? Where are they going? Are they just being collected by the angels? Should I add that too? No, they are snatched out by Jesus, and they will stand on Mount Zion. They will hide there until the wrath of God has passed, and then the angels will go and collect the people that are left over. That's what happens. And these people that are collected by the angels, they are, of course, the invited guests to the wedding. And later on, after the wedding, they are going to be really the servants. They're going to be the servants. Here's your choice. Do you want to be bride or you want to be servant? One of the two. Yes, there's two things. Because who's going to come to the wedding? Who is invited to the wedding? Please let me know. Coming to an end. Let the Holy Spirit guide you always.